First thing we're going to talk about is the level of toxicity in Wuhan. Nobody talked about that when the coronavirus issue started. Remember, December 2019, first case of coronavirus reported, but this population, as far back as 2013, was being exposed to levels of pollution that were extraordinary, to the point that in 2015, this article is actually in 2015 talking about controversial incinerators that were licensed in Wuhan, and this was talking about 2 incinerator plants that were unlicensed in close proximity to neighborhoods with populations of 30,000 people or more, and the level of toxicity that these people had been subjected to, and how they were being they had to resort to using all sorts of other devices trying to just be able to breathe. But in 2017, BBC and CNN covered some of the protests that were going on. Now, some of this information goes all the way back to 2013, and we'll show that. So this is an article in 2019, but BBC has footage of riots that were taking place in Wuhan as far back as 2016, 2017. So this thing says, while the world's attention has been focused on social protests in Hong Kong, another Chinese city has been witnessing unrest on a scale rarely seen on the mainland. Thousands of citizens in Wuhan, the capital city of central Hubei province, took to the streets last week for several days. They were angry about a planned waste incineration plant that will bring dangerous levels of pollution to the town. Now, here's a problem. In 2016, 2017, there was so much pollution from these incinerators that the public outcry garnered international attention, okay? And as I said, CNN and BBC, in fact, I think this is BBC right here. This is BBC. So a lot of stuff that was going on, okay? There's more and more things here. Okay, here's a New York Times. They covered this. This was, again, in July 2019, going back how the Chinese government was very hesitant because of their, there were, I think they said, in such Chinese cities. So, again, a lot of problems with pollution. Nobody was talking about the pollution. This particular article actually talks about Wuhan, a city of about 10 million people, say police have been detaining and taking some protesters away in vans, apparently targeting people who had urged others online to join the demonstrations. So they were preventing social outcry. They were censoring people's disgruntlement with the amount of pollution that was going on, and so the government was shutting down. Now, this is not talking about the number of people that had been mass inoculated in certain areas, certain provinces of China in the fall of 2019, and I am not 100% certain if Wuhan was one of those. I believe it was, but again, I can't substantiate that. But regardless, you got toxic level of air in Wuhan for going back as far as 2013. The references are here. Definitely covered in 2015, global coverage in 2017 by BBC and CNN. And of course, nobody's talking about the role of that toxicity in these individuals that got coronavirus. All right, so the issue with the incinerators is not a small issue. It's a massive issue. And here, Wuhan incinerator pollution protests, you can see a lot of the images and different news sites that talked about some of this. Incinerator sparks protest. In China, incinerator plants leads thousands to protest. So a big issue, okay? This is from CNN. All right, then we have 12,000 towers, 5G towers in Wuhan, not powered on. In December, they power on a small fraction of them, 1,500, 2,000. I don't exactly remember the number, but it was a small number. Launched, turned on at the same time, incidentally, coincidentally, who knows, in Wuhan in December of 2019. So what relationship could 5G have? Some people are saying 5G is a weaponized system. It's this, it's that. Look, I'm just going to present the facts to you, and I'm going to show you the health implications of 5G. Everybody says the 5G is safe. That's what they say. Everyone, right? The government says it's safe. Well, first of all, we know the government doesn't always say the things are safe, that are always safe. And then it takes 10, 20, 50 years before they come out and then it's proven that those things weren't safe. Look at cigarette smoking, right? A cigarette a day keeps the doctor away. And now, of course, we have warnings in every cigarette carton that it causes lung cancer, et cetera, et cetera. You have mass lawsuits, et cetera, that happened, but it took years. In fact, if you look at the dirty dozen, the top 12 most toxic substances that have been banned by the World Health Organization for commercial usage throughout the world, if you look at these top 12, and if you want to see what the top 12 are, you can go to our Know Your Options medical series and look at the Cancer, the Untold Truth, the DVD, and you'll see I have a whole presentation on those, on the dirty dozen, what we call the dirty dozen, or what the World Health Organization calls the dirty dozen. They're banned now from use in commercial global enterprise, these 12 substances. Yet each one of them was in global commerce for at least 50 years. Some of these had been in global commerce for over 70 years before they were finally banned. So it takes years before somebody finally figures out that, wait a second, this is dangerous. So for the government to say, oh, this is safe, one, is irresponsible because there's a lot of studies that have been done to show that it's not safe. And the people that say are safe, there's a lot of conflict of interest there, okay? Remember, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, that's there to protect us. How many drugs have they had to recall? How many drugs did they recall that were considered to be safe, right? Vioxx, for example, killed 55,000 people before they finally pulled it off the market, a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. Look at all the drugs for obesity, some of the diabetic drugs. There's all sorts of drugs that they have to pull back off the market. And again, this isn't about the inadequacy or the incompetence of the FDA. That's not what this video is about. This is talking about the coronavirus, and so that you understand really what the issue is. Now, just because the government says it's safe, we need to look at it. And in actuality, there are thousands of people that feel that it's unsafe, and there's over 240 researchers and scientists that have created a coalition to basically protest the rollout of the 5G. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So it's coronavirus linked to China's rollout of 5G biowarfare. I actually was entertained by that, but there's something here that I want to show you. More than 230 scientists from 41 countries have expressed their serious concerns regarding the ubiquitous and increasing exposure to EMFs generated by electric and wireless devices already before the additional 5G rollout. Now, it's important to remember that most of the EMFs that are being generated right now are either 50 hertz or 60 hertz. So in Europe and certain other parts of the world, it's 50 hertz. Our electrical wires here are based on 60 hertz. But when they start talking about the EMFs from some of these other mobile devices and such, we're looking at from like handheld devices, iPads, mobile phones and such. And those are at around 900 hertz, okay? Now the 5G is much higher than that. That goes all the way up to 30 kilohertz, I believe it is, 30,000 kilohertz, 30,000 gigahertz. I'll show you the numbers specifically, but it's a much higher level of electromagnetic fields that they're creating, and the biological implications are just not known, all right? It's very, very important to also understand that. And this is from February 2019. Again, we're not talking about the recent rollout of 5G. This is a rollout that's been in process for some time, for a couple of, at least a year and a half or two. Now, when I say rollout, I'm talking about they're actually building them. They haven't turned them on yet. And there have been certain countries that have been vying for this, and I'm going to explain that here in a moment. But this particular article is about the use of 5G in China's Intelligent Medical Demonstration Project, where they were going to use the 5G to roll out intelligent emergency responses and intelligent operating rooms and intelligent monitoring. They call it intelligent methodology, I guess, as opposed to not being intelligent before because it was dependent on more human factor. I don't know. But regardless, they were using it for various aspects of medicine. And the last thing I want to talk about is then the doctor who reported this. He basically reported an unusual respiratory condition, SARS-like condition, and then was picked up by the Chinese police and interrogated and then released, basically told not to talk about it, and then became supposedly the first physician casualty of the coronavirus. All right. So I'm just going to play this video here. It's kind of suspect that you've got a country like China that, causes problems, suppresses their population, prevents them from talking out, and then when they report something, somebody reports something like that, they basically shut them down. And then, of course, they get sick and die the next month, right? So he reported this in December, got sick and got picked up, released, and then apparently got sick in January and died early February. Let's go ahead and play this.
The Chinese whistleblower doctor who told the world about the coronavirus in Wuhan has died. Our David Culver is in Beijing with more. David, this news obviously just coming to hand. A very young doctor there in Wuhan. You spoke to him earlier this week. Just explain what you now know.
Linda, this is devastating. And my colleagues and I here in Beijing, we connected with him. In fact, you saw in that story that just ran, my producer Young, who's in the room here with me, he was the one who first made contact with him, and he wasn't talking to any foreign media at the time. Dr. Li Wenliang had become really well known here after in late December. He was really inadvertently put out a message to some of his friends, his classmates from his medical school, telling them that something was going around that was similar to SARS. He said, be careful with your families, be careful with your loved ones. And that was it. He didn't expect that to go anywhere. Somebody screenshotted that. It went viral. His name was attached, and he got called into the health commission locally there in Wuhan. And they asked him how he got that information. Shortly thereafter, they started releasing more information publicly about the outbreak. And then they closed that now infamous seafood market. But that wasn't it. There was no praise for him. And in fact, there was the opposite. He got a call from police. Wuhan police called him in. They reprimanded him. They made him sign an affidavit of sorts that suggested that he was willingly spreading rumors, and he kept quiet for a while. For a few weeks, in fact, went back to work. And it was while seeing patients as an ophthalmologist that they believe he may have contracted the coronavirus, and he transmitted it to his parents as well. Well, what we've known since is that he is one of several doctors, in fact, they believe at least 8 altogether, who were blowing whistles here early on and trying to sound the alarms and trying to make sure that local authorities in particular knew what was going on. And this got all the way up to the Supreme Court here in China, which ultimately says publicly, Linda, that they support Dr. Li and all the other whistleblowers and what they did, and they criticized Wuhan police for reprimanding those whistleblowers.
This brings us back to the conclusion of the overview of what I want to talk about. And now I'm going to go into more of the corona history, and actually this is the most disturbing part, the coronavirus history. We're going to talk about coronavirus and 5G and what 5G does to the immune system. And then we're going to talk about what you can do. So that's the next part.